Welcome to Politics Done Right. I am your host, Egberto Williams. This is the progressive program that will take the mystery out of politics. This is the program that will encourage you to make sure government becomes we the people. Whether you are liberal, conservative, or otherwise, you get to air your point of view. Remember, you can also send me a tweet to EGBERTOWILLIES. That is, at Egberto Williams. Let us engage. It is politics done right.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Well, folks, welcome to one more edition of Politics Done Right. I'm Egberto Williams, your host. Thank you so kindly for being a part of the show. We are going to have a great show for you today. Today's show, we actually have a guest. And the guest is one of those people that, when her agent contacted us, and I saw the title that the thing that she wanted to speak about, all I could say is, wow, this is the time for us to hear to hear exactly why it is that people are reacting the way they are reacting in our current body politic, why a strong man is in power, why it is so hard to dislodge some from him. And after going through this interview, I think it's going to become quite clear, because it's not going to be just one person telling you something. It's going to become quite clear why we are in the situation that we are currently in. So what I want to do is I want to go ahead and get the show started rather promptly. Let me go ahead and bring the show up so that we can actually get started. The title of the show today is Dr. Riane Eisler discusses nurturing humanity out of our political mess. Okay, I kind of made a play on a book that she has, but pretty much she is her prose is about nurturing humanity out of our political mess. If you break it down, in other words, I mean, we have to change here the mind before we can change the politics. Once we change, and the mind is not just, oh, we have to change conservatives this way or anything like that, because we are all in this game. And as you'll hear her point out at the end, just about everybody has to change the way that they currently think. Dr. Riane Eisler points out that we must understand the psychology behind Trump and those who elected him and didn't. Not only those who elected him, but those who didn't. And we will, according to her, continue cycles of regression if we don't fundamentally understand what is really going on. Riane Eisler is the doctor we need right now, one who understands the mind. She is the president of the Center of Partnership Studies, also known as CPS. She's the editor. Actually, I don't need to read this out, because what we did is in the beginning of the interview, we tell you exactly who she is. But anyhow, what's going on right now? It seems like Brother Rudy Giuliani is in trouble right now. It seems like the ship may be falling off, the wheels may be falling off of the cart. But it only will completely fall off if we make sure that it does. The other thing, Trump rages at Fox News after poll shows most Americans want him impeached. Much different than it used to be, is what he said. Trump vented his anger at Fox News after a poll commissioned by the network showed most Americans wanted him impeached. The survey now has 51% of Americans want him not just impeached, but removed. And, everybody's playing the waiting game. Are these polls real? Are these polls going to be duplicated? I don't know, but I have to ask progressives to postulate several things. Think about several things. Do we really want Donald Trump We want him impeached. We want to put that scarlet letter on him. But do we want him gone? Do we want him out of the picture? We don't quite know what would be there. We don't quite know. Okay, think about that. Think about that. Lindsey Graham is finally finding his spine to go against Trump. Now that Trump, you know what is so funny in this country? Trump has hurt a lot of people. He has hurt women. He has hurt people of color. He has hurt people of, LGBT. I mean, he's really hurt a lot of people. He's destroyed the environment. He's cut regulations that shouldn't be cut. He's given away tax breaks to those who didn't deserve it. I mean, he's done a whole lot of things. And guess what? We have a whole lot of people not saying anything about it, right? Let Trump be Trump, all that good stuff. But Trump decides now that he wants to get out of a war. He wants to get out of Syria. Oh, even those people who were sucking his butt now think that, oh my God, you can't do that. It's amazing that only war, the killing of other people, is what's necessary to get the people that are staunchest in favor of Trump to actually give him a second chance. Or rather, to actually castigate him rather than give him a second chance. But anyhow, let's go ahead and get busy. What I want to do is I want to go ahead and start this interview. I think you'll find the interview quite enlightening. Please remember to go ahead and share this because I think it's one of those important things that people really need to be listening to. So if you're just joining us, it is imperative that you share this and share this and share this so that other people can see what we're doing out here. So without further ado, what I'm going to do is go ahead and play. Oh, you know what? Before I do that, no, I'll go ahead and play. Which one should I play first? Let me go ahead and, while we get more audience, let me go ahead and play a rant. Why what Eisler is doing, why Riane Eisler is doing is so important. I had a rant at KPFT this week that I want to play again because after I thought about it, I said, you know what? More people need to hear this. So let's play this and then we'll play the interview. Now, seriously, I have a daughter that's a millennial. I've got a daughter that's a millennial, and I'm not kidding you. What's happening in this country scared the holy hell out of me. And the reason why is when I came to this country from Panama, we had a vision of what America was. And when I came to this country, America was that vision. And what we have seen progressively happen in this country from the inception of Reaganomics is the destruction of everything this country was. And I know there are people that are standing up saying otherwise. I know, when you put a frog in the water to boil, the temperature changes so slowly. That frog does not realize it's being cooked until it's too late. That is where we are in this country right now. We are starting to warm to a boil, to a cooking. And a lot of us don't see it. A lot of us choose not to see it because we can't, sometimes ignorance is bliss. Sometimes not opening your eyes to see things. You start to tell yourself, it can't be so, it can't be so. And you know what? For you, those of you that are my age, it is okay. Because when stuff hits the fan, we'll be dead. But if you have a child, if you have a kid, 30-something or younger, you have to think, first of all, what could we have done better to mitigate what's happening now that we didn't do? Really, and I'm serious about that. As an adult, as a 45-year-old or older, think about it. What could I have done differently? How could I have voted differently? How could I have participated differently to really make a difference so that my kid isn't potentially going to go through what she's going through or what she will likely go through if we fail, if Daniel fails, if Lupita fails, if we fail to get the job done and turn this juggernaut around. What does it mean? ¿Qué significa? Yeah, I thought I wanted to play that out because that goes directly now into how are we going to make those changes. So let me present to you Dr. Riane Eisler. Welcome to one more edition of Politics Done Right. Today we have an interesting show. While one may believe it doesn't cover the topics that we normally cover, let me tell you that this is going to be one wonderful interview. First of all, with us we have Riane Eisler. I hope I said the name correctly. Welcome aboard Politics Done Right.
It's a pleasure to be with you, Egberto.
Well, first, let me tell you, Riane Eisler is a PhD, a JD, is president of the Center for Partnership Studies, CPS, editor-in-chief of the Interdisciplinary Journal of Partnership Studies at the University of Minnesota, and internationally known as author of The Chalice and Blade, Our History, Our Future, now in 57 U.S. printings and 27 foreign editions. What a task. And other books. Her The Real Wealth of Nations, Creating a Caring Economics, was hailed by Nobel Peace Laureate Archbishop Desmond Tutu as a template for the better world we have been so urgently seeking. Her recent book, Nurturing Our Humanity, which is the main topic of discussion here, How Domination and Partnership Shape Our Brains, Lives, and Future, which she co-authored with anthropologist Douglas Fry from Oxford University Press in 2019, combines her research with the latest findings from the social and biological sciences, especially neuroscience. Riane Eisler, welcome aboard Politics Done Right. Thank you for being with us.
It's a pleasure to be with you, Egberto.
First of all, in scanning your book, the first thing that kind of popped out to me is your early beginnings on a boat on the coast of Cuba. Why don't you tell me a little bit about that? That's a history that many Americans don't understand. We've had this sort of history of not only immigrants, but of those that are coming over here out of need for a long time. Why don't you tell me a little bit about that?
Well, I think I empathize a great deal with people who are coming here out of need, with refugees, because I was, with my parents, a child refugee from Nazi Europe. So I go way back. And we escaped the Holocaust really by a hair's breadth. And we were able to be on one of the last ships before one that was turned back from Cuba, before the St. Louis, to be admitted. And really that saved our lives, being able to, but it was also, of course, very traumatic. And growing up in the industrial slums of Havana in the Batista days, you know, where the gaps between haves and have-nots were horrendous.
Right.
That was another lesson in trauma and in injustice, really, for me. So all of that led me actually to my research, to answer some questions that really I articulated later on more precisely, but questions that, well, I know you've asked, does it have to be this way? Does there have to be so much cruelty, insensitivity, violence? And if not, what are the alternatives? And my research says that yes, there is an alternative, but to see it, we have to get out of our conventional way of thinking.
And that is what I love of what I saw. Mina, you have this thing that you called the systemic and macroscopic views. Why don't you tell me a little bit about that?
Well, when I started my research, it became very clear, well, even before that, you know, I realized that in all my years of higher education, quote unquote, there had been hardly anything in what I was taught about, you know, by, for, and about people like me, women.
Right.
Nor was there hardly anything about children. I mean, the majority of humanity has been left out of conventional studies of society. That's big.
Why is that?
Well, because look, if you don't see the whole picture, I mean, from a systems standpoint, obviously, But you can't see the various parts of the picture. You cannot connect the dots. And that's what my work is about. What it shows is really something that once articulated, of course, it's self-evident, that yes, there is a connection between how a culture constructs our most primary human relations, childhood and gender, and also how it constructs politics and economics and everything else.
Now,
But
so
you can't see that if you leave out a whole huge part of the picture, right?
exactly, and to me, that is the essence of this book. All through it, I can tell you that in when I started reading, the concept of selfishness came out, and your first writings about it scared me, because I have this concept that inherent to human beings, most people, and not all, most people are inherently good. And moreover, I have this concept that I preach all of the times, that, given many externalities, people change, people are different. And what I noticed at first when I started reading the book, it seemed like somebody talked about, and by the way, I'm not an anthropologist, I'm an engineer. I am not a historian, I'm an engineer. So what I looked at in the book is I saw that somebody mentioned a selfish gene. And as soon as I saw that, it was worrisome. So first of all, tell me a little bit about this supposed selfish gene that really may be non-existent.
Well, it's really non-existent, probably, because it's so interesting. We make the comparison in the book between the belief that, storm gods, or evil spirits or whatever. And now it's a selfish gene. It's the same story, right? We don't have agency. We are controlled by, but I don't know how you got this idea because the book really debunks with evidence from neuroscience, from from both the social and biological sciences.
That is what happens when you start scanning. When you start scanning and you first see, you start scanning a book, because I have to read a lot of books. You start scanning a book and you go ahead and you see selfish gene, and then you see this particular scientist speaks about it, and the heart sink, because it's like, oh, it must be true. But I'm going to ask in a particular question about that. But tell me a little bit more about how you debunked it.
Well, it is really debunked in this book on many, many counts. One, this book combines my research on what I call the partnership and domination systems, which do include what happens at the status of the majority of humanity, women and children, with new findings from neuroscience. And it also debunks, all right, let me answer your question here. It debunks it on the basis of neuroscience, for one thing, because what we're learning is if there is a default for human behavior, it is not the so-called original sin or the evolutionary imperative that, too bad, rape, war, it's, we may not like it, but that's in our genes, right?
Right.
Absolutely not. What we know from neuroscience is that people's pleasure centers, parts of our brains, I won't use the technical language, it's not necessary, light up more when we share, when we give, and when we win. But there's also, it's debunked on many counts. I've been working on this book now for 10 years. It takes me a long time to write my books. But 4 years ago, I invited the anthropologist Douglas Fry to join me as a co-author. He has a lot of expertise in neuroscience too, but he's probably one of the world's authorities on foraging societies. And guess what? Foraging is how we humans and pre-humans, hominids, lived for millennia.
Exactly.
Not just for a few hundred or 1,000 years. And He calls them the original partnership societies. Why? Because they're more egalitarian, they're gender balanced, so there is also equal valuing of women and men. And with this more valuing of the so-called, in domination systems, the so-called feminine, caring, caregiving, nonviolence, which men, ooh, right? I mean, real men can't be like women, right?
Learned behavior, right?
Right. Learned behavior, indoctrinated in boys from birth practically, and in girls too, because this is not women against men or men against women. It's a system. And of course, they were peaceful. So the whole story we've been told, continue to be told. But, it's no wonder, because out of 1,600 years of so-called modern science, Western science, only 50 years ago did we have women's studies, men's studies, gender studies, African American studies. And as for child development, it's still siloed. It's someplace tucked away. It should be part of sociology, anthropology, political science, economics, because I'm just going on here with you.
No. I want to hear. Let me look, Riane. Let me tell you why I wanted to do this interview. The fact of the matter is, we are in trouble as a country right now, from an ideological standpoint. And I wanted somebody that knew a hell of a lot more than I did. There are certain things that I get by inferring, and reading your book made many of those inferences. Thank you. Although it scared me a couple of times, but reading it gave me a good feeling about the inferences. I think it's the type of book that everybody should read, because what happens is it doesn't give you hope. It gives you resolve. In other words, it tells you these are the way things really are. These are the things what ideology has imposed on you. These are the things that we then can change. Because what your book says, in effect, is that these things are not predetermined. These things can all be changed because they're just based on. Go ahead.
I love what you said about resolve. I sometimes say it gives you grounded hope, but I like resolve much better, because we can do it. But if you remember, the book ends with 4 cornerstones.
Mm-hmm.
And they're not your conventional political cornerstones at all. But, in 2007, I wrote an op-ed saying, let's learn something from what the people pushing us back to what I call the domination system, the so-called rightist fundamentalist alliance in the United States. And it's also a corporate alliance, of course. But they have shifted the normative ideal for family
Mm-hmm.
way back to a domination point, where what I found, a survey that asked people, is the father the master
Right.
of the house? The percentage of people increased, because why? The rightist fundamentalist alliance first came together to defeat a, quote, women's issue. It's very interesting. The Equal Rights Amendment. People don't realize this at all. And they have focused, and it's not just they who focus on a, quote, traditional family, which is a code, isn't it?
Yes.
For authoritarian, rigidly male-dominated, highly punitive family. So does Khomeini in Iran, so does ISIS. But there are reasons for that. They get it, that it is, all right, they may not know the neuroscience, okay? But they do know in their gut what neuroscience shows, that what children experience and observe in their early years impacts nothing less than how our brains develop, and hence how we feel, think, and act, including how we vote, by the way.
Right. You just said something that's interesting. You said they may not know neuroscience, they may not know any of that stuff, but they do know what they know. And it's funny, because from most from most engineering backgrounds, you don't necessarily have to know the details of why things work. We can go to a scientist and get things and then just operate on that notion. And that is what the dictators and that is what the fascists and that's what they all do. They don't necessarily know the science behind what they're doing, but they actually know how to get it done. Now, I'm glad that you brought up the domination, how in your book you mentioned about, because a lot of people think that different people are predisposed to be a certain way. What your book note is that externalities, environment, how you were brought up has a hell of a lot to do with your outcomes, a hell of a lot to do with your method of thinking, a hell of a lot to do with how your brains are wired. So tell us a little bit about that.
Well, I think this should be sort of taught to us, but it hasn't been. And this is why I write the books I do. We are not born with fully developed brains.
Mm-hmm.
Our brain actually develops in interaction with our environments. For humans, that is primarily our cultural environment, right?
Mm-hmm.
As needed by family, very, very important, education, religion, politics, economics. So if you grow up in this, quote, traditional family, highly, it's a code, highly authoritarian, rigidly male-dominated, highly punitive family, what do children learn before their brains are fully formed, much less their critical faculties? That comes much later. They learn two lessons that are fundamental to maintaining and imposing domination systems. One is they learn to equate difference, beginning with the difference in form in our species between male and female, with either superiority or inferiority, dominating or being dominated, served or serving. So they have a template for in-group versus out-group thinking. And it isn't just the racism in the United States. In the Middle East, it's Shia versus Sunni, Sunni versus Shia. Did you see what I'm saying? I mean, this is not only a question of the United States, this is a global issue. But they also learn, and then, they just, the two go together. But the other lesson they learn, and this is fundamental for authoritarian domination regimes, now political regimes, they learn that it's very painful to not obey orders, no matter how bizarre, much less unjust they are. And they learn because they're dependent on the very people who really are punitive or causing them pain, to love them. And so they will love the, quote, strong man who promises. You see where this all goes?
Yes.
This is not isolated. We have to understand the system's dynamics. If we're going to keep having regressions because we've been going forward, compared to the European Middle Ages, I sometimes say it as a joke that when I get depressed, I think of the European Middle Ages. They look like the Taliban, the Inquisition, Crusades, the witch burnings, women and children, forget it. Nobody had any rights. I mean, St. Augustine put it very succinctly. He said, for anyone to question their status in life, it's like a nose wanting to be an eye. Bam. Right?
Yes.
But we have moved forward, but we've had all these regressions, and they have not coincidentally. We have to really connect the dots, and to connect them, we have to see them, right?
Right.
Not coincidentally, whether it was Hitler in Germany or Khomeini in Iran, very different, right? They were based always. I mean, why did Khomeini say that the chador, which is a symbol of women's, really, I mean, it can be interpreted many ways, but it is blackness, evil. It is all the same system, different, it can be religious, it can be secular, it can be Eastern, it can be Western, it can be socialist. Stalin, oh boy, did he go back from a more egalitarian family? Big time.
Right.
And so this is what my work has been about.
Well,
And I'm so glad that you just seem to get it so completely. I love that.
Well, I mean, I think look, you see, I am of the thought that a lot of what we do, I mean, here in the type of politics that I practice, I'm very left wing, but the type of politics that I practice is one that is very inclusive. In other words, I want to hear from everybody because I think it's from everybody that we actually come out with things. And again, that is a democratic way to do things. Um, but to be that way requires uh, the kind of psychological or the kind of psychological understanding that you are putting forth in your book, which is one of the reasons I'm telling people you should get this book because it's not about helping those of us who are already willing to go ahead and learn this stuff. It's about being able to address others when they come with certain things that they would never have had an inclination to have this discussion that we're having now. You give us the tools that we can use on with these people outside the fold and then be able to change en masse to bring people in.
It's more than that. I mean, and I agree with you, obviously.
Right.
If we don't build the foundations, you wouldn't build a house without building solid foundations.
Exactly.
And we have, over the last 3 centuries, because of the Industrial Revolution destabilizing everything, one progressive social movement after another has challenged traditions of domination.
Hmm.
You know, the so-called divinely ordained right of kings to rule, divinely ordained right of men to rule over women and children, divinely ordained right of a quote superior race to rule over inferior one, all the way to the environmental movement, challenging man's once hallowed conquest of nature, which at our level of technology is about to do us in.
Exactly.
But they have really paid mostly attention to dismantling the top of the domination pyramid.
Mm.
Politics and economics as conventionally defined. And I emphasize as conventionally defined
Please
because,
say more. Please say more.
okay, and they have not paid sufficient attention to shifting from domination to partnership in these 4 cornerstones: childhood. I mean, thank goodness the American Psychological Association finally recently said not only is spanking, uh, inefficient,
Hmm.
but it is harmful. But they don't get the whole connection. It's harmful because what do children learn? They learn that it is fine, it is acceptable, it is moral to use violence to impose your will on others. I mean, let's think in systems terms a little here.
Hmm.
Gender, why? Because when you split humanity the way that domination stereotypes, gender stereotypes, which we're challenging, which is good news. Again, I mean, there's movement towards partnership, but it's in such bits and pieces, and this work gives a frame. But look, what are men are taught, as I said, you can't be like a woman, not a real man.
Right.
So what does that mean? It's caring, caregiving, nonviolence, right? So
Absolutely.
with women, so men are left with, they get emotions, they get contempt and anger, period. I mean, it's weird. And women are disempowered. It's crazy. I mean, if a woman is assertive, she's a ball breaker, right?
Mm.
We're so distorted.
Right.
But value system, in my book on economics, The Real Wealth of Nations, I show the gendered system of values. That if you really think about it, why is there always enough money for prisons? Well, it's the old domination gender stereotype of the punitive father, isn't it?
Yes. We are going to have to bring you on to discuss that other book that I hadn't known about because we talk a whole lot about economics here. So I'm going to have to get
Okay.
that book and bring you back onto that. But we only have a few minutes. And what I want to talk about now is current day American politics.
Okay.
Okay. Um, I would like to know from you, what is your suggestion? How do progressives, and I'm assuming when I say progressives, I mean folks who want to move the nation forward in every aspect, economics, gender, in every aspect. How can we inculcate within the minds of people that these are not just crazy left-wing ideas, but these are the real human ideas? These are the real things that brings out our humanity.
Well, I think that understanding that actually, as I said, the default for our species is caring and sharing. We're capable of cruelty, violence, or we wouldn't see it, is a first step. The stories, I said 4 cornerstones. One of the cornerstones is stories and language. Another one is economics, but as defined differently, caring economics. If we understand that the stories we have been told are simply not true, the stories about, quote, human nature, that is very important. And for us as progressives, left is not going to solve it. Look at what happened in the former Soviet Union and in China. The real struggle for our future is between the configuration of a domination system, which is this authoritarian top-down system in both the family and the state or tribe, rigid gender stereotypes, a gendered system of values, the ranking of one half of humanity over the other, and of course, high level of abuse and violence. How in the world do you maintain, whether it's under Stalin or Kim Jong-un on the left, right? Mm-hmm. Or whether it's Hitler or, the world, look, what's happening in the world today, what's happening in the United States today politically is a classic example of regression to the domination side of the social scale, because it's always a matter of degree, okay? That the American public elected a, quote, strong man who promised that he would take care of everything and who incited in versus out thinking, who really, the way that he despises women and the so-called soft or feminine, it's classic domination, regression. But it's not only happening in the United States. So-called religious fundamentalism, whether it's here or whether it's in the Middle East, same thing. It's really domination fundamentalism, okay? So what we need to do, first of all, is to change our thinking, to understand that we have to have a systemic view and that we will continue to have regressions unless we pay attention to the matters that we have been taught are not important. Childhood, gender, and economics, the gender system of values that informs economics, wow. It's big, but we haven't been conscious of it. And I know it's hard for people to come out of their comfort zones, but it is progressives. Once we understand that we're talking about a systemic shift, as you do, I love your systems thinking. As an engineer, you've been taught, haven't you?
Absolutely.
Let's apply that, for goodness sakes, to society. And it's very interesting. Regressives recognize the importance of what happens with women and children. For many progressives, sexism is not good, but this is a women's issue. And as for children, well, yeah, that's, we'd like to, but that's the children's issue. We're going to talk about the important things, right? Nonsense. These are important things, and they're directly, as I said about Trump, directly related to the kind of political system and the kind of economic system we have. So I'm so glad to talk with you, Egberto, and to continue our conversation, because this is fundamental. If we can lay the foundations, if we change our thinking and stop fighting with each other, for goodness sakes. I mean, this is how domination systems also maintain themselves, fragmenting not only our consciousness so that we think that the majority of humanity doesn't count, but fragmenting us into environmentalists and social justice, economic justice. It's all movement towards the partnership system.
Divide and conquer.
Absolutely.
Riane Eisler, PhD, President of the Center for Partnership Studies and author of Nurturing Our Humanity. Thank you so kindly for having been with Politics Done Right. We will meet again for that book on economics, and you have a wonderful rest of your day.
And you too, Alberto. And next time we'll talk about the new metrics that we have developed, because that is vital. How do we measure what we value, what we really value?
Thank you so kindly, Riane. Well, folks, I hope you enjoyed that. I really enjoyed the interview with her. Like I said, when I saw her, when her people sent her stuff to me, I said, we get a ton of requests from interviews from people who've written books, from people who are doing things in the political world and in many different worlds, and a lot of times what it turns out to be is well, yeah, cool, maybe we'll look at it sometime. But when this one popped up and I looked and I said, oh, I got to call her. This is going to be or contact her. This is going to be a good one. And we've been in touch. And after going through her book, I said, this is something that our audience, and remember, this is our audience, all of us here, and eventually we keep bringing people in. This is something that I think folks have to understand. If there's one thing I hope you got out of that was, and she didn't quite say it in these words, but we are all indoctrinated. All of us. I am, you are, everybody's indoctrinated. And indoctrinated is not inherently bad if it follows our instinctive, the good part of our instinctive nature, the caring part of our instinctive nature. Very few people don't have kids they don't like. Most of us, we have a kid, there's an attachment to that kid. My kid can get away with hell, and you love that kid, you nurture that kid, because people are inherently good. You are inherently good. Most Americans are inherently good. Most people of the world are inherently good. That is the first thing you have to get into your head. You watch the news and you watch TV and you watch these things and you start to think people are bad. Those Trumpists are just these terrible people. No. No. It's easy. That's the easy stance to take. And by the way, this is not an admonition. This is something that Dr. Eisler is putting out there. If we could just understand how we work, understand how our minds function, understand where we've been, we'll get it. We'll get it. And that's what I love about her message, right? Because what she's saying is instinctively we are good, but the domination nation, the domination culture, in fact, she said, if you notice one of the things that she said, there was a time in life when we were hunter-gatherers. And when we were hunter-gatherers, it was different. We took care of each other, we had partnerships and all these kinds of things. But afterwards, after that hunter-gatherer went away and we got different forms created by men who wanted to dominate, and we got things like a particular economic system, a capitalist economic system that no longer depended on our innate humanity, but instead on looking at a business model first and then humanity second, and we fit humanity into a business model created by a few. And remember what I said, most people are good. Most people are good. If most people weren't good, capitalists couldn't exist, because we would not have allowed them to take advantage of us the way we have. But does that mean we need to be bad to have a transformational change? Or does it mean we have to get violent to have a transformational change? Or does it mean no, we don't. Because if most people are good, and most of us are the people that are good, we can have that transformational change in a peaceful manner if we disregard all the programming that is coming from those who want us to change, or those who don't want a change. And those are the kinds of people that I want to bring on going forward. People that are going to tell us, people that are going to show us that, yes, we can make that transformational change. Yes, we don't have to be scared of it. I mean, there's a piece that I wrote. You know, we're talking a lot about impeachment, and we forget a whole lot of times that most people, in as much as everybody's going to feel fine after impeachment, what then? What next? And I want to tell you something that I wrote in a piece that's going to be published in the Daily Coast on Sunday. I said, and just a few paragraphs, but I hope that you'll go ahead and read it at Daily Coast, or if you're a member of our team, if you're not a team, if you're all a member of our team, if you're a subscriber, because of contractual obligations we have with Daily Coast, we can't have that. We can't put it on our website, but those of you who are our subscribers, I actually consider editors, so you can take a look at our stuff earlier on. But I want to read this to you. Let's see. Reynard says, our socio-economic system doesn't allow for full human growth and transformation. That's true, but we can change that. What I was saying is, now, when Trump gets impeached, and these are the things that I want to kind of build on. When Trump gets impeached, whether removed from office or not, the euphoric sugar high will be short-lived. Why? The declining path of the poor and the middle class remains on the same trajectory since the inception of supply side, voodoo economics, Reaganomics. All of that stays the same. So whether Trump is impeached or not, nothing has changed. I mean, Obama came in and tried to make a change, but we didn't have enough push behind Obama to get the real change that we want. So Gen Zs, millennials, and Gen Xs will still be in insurmountable debt. Parents will still have no choice but to compromise the well-being of their kids with expensive substandard childcare. Immigrant children and adults will still wake up to stresses of living under a cloud of uncertainty. Many Americans will live under the uncertainty quality of water they drink and the food they eat. The deficit-fueled debt will continue to rise because of continual irresponsible wealth transferring tax cuts to the rich, putting our social safety net at risk. Our infrastructure, roads, bridges, airports, ports, and buildings are falling apart as we fall behind many other industrialized countries. Health insurance remains either unaffordable or unusable because of high deductibles and copays, even as countries implementing a version of Medicare for all are healthier, less stressed, and unconcerned about medical bankruptcy. Impeaching Donald Trump solves none of those problems. Republican politicians, in their callous disregard for humanity and family values they purport to stand for, have convinced enough of their constituents who would benefit from solving the above-mentioned problems that they are unattainable. In other words, no, we can't. Our biggest concern should be what many in the Democratic Party consider too progressive to be presidentially viable. That is neither what the polls say nor what a humane belief dictates, as has been mentioned ad nauseum in my blogs and all over the place. The progressive policies articulated above are poll way north of 50%. These are policies both Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren have been championing for decades between them both. Americans are hurting. One of the problems is we are good at suffering in silence. And those doing marginally well are the most politically active because they either have the time, money, or both, which tend to skew the options. As an example, those with great corporate or negotiated union health insurance many times see fighting for comparable insurance for the rest of Americans, which is most Americans, as a benefit they must give up. And that is what our plutocracy attempts to inculcate in the brains of all. Instead of realizing that the fight is for all to have great health insurance we can all afford because we remove the legalized thuggery from the system, pilfering by the pharmaceuticals, insurance companies, and hospitals, we take our eyes off the ball. Those responsible for death or bankruptcy of hundreds of thousands every year do it solely for profit. The whole piece is going to be at Daily Kos on... The whole piece is going to be at Daily Kos on Sunday, so check it out. Folks, let me tell you, I have hope. You know, I was at KPFT and I was speaking to a few people, and they're like, "How do you feel? Are you hopeful? What you?" And I'm like, "Yes, I am not only hopeful, I'm resolved. I feel full of resolve to get things done. That's why I'm doing what I'm doing. I have never done anything because I think I'm going to fail or we are going to fail. We should never do that. I think the time is now. I think just like at the time when President Obama got elected, the stars lined up in such a manner that we got a candidate that we never thought in those times could have been elected but got elected. A candidate with a funny name, a candidate with the wrong hue, a candidate with a kind of different kind of being. We are now ready for the continuation of the transformation. Earlier on, when Obamacare was passed, I wrote in several blogs, it was just a transition. It was to show that we were going to start joining the rest of the world in a democracy with social values, in a democracy that did not just look at the dollar or where we completely dissect capitalism away from the form of government. I didn't say get rid of capitalism. Those who want to practice capitalism, be my guest. Be my guest. But those who want to practice collectivism, be my guest. Daniel Ledo is always on my case whenever I mention Hugh. Daniel? Well, I don't think that deserves an answer. But, so, it is about decoupling a segment of our economic system from government. Decoupling a segment of our economic system from government, such that we can really start supporting people. What does that really mean? That means the coexistence of the independent coexistence of the type of economies that we want, because we all fall under an umbrella that respects the social state. Respect your health care. Respect your retirement. Respect your environment. Respect all of these. That is the social construct. And when we get there, that is what we're working towards. Those who want to be capitalists, follow the rules and obey the regulation, keep the environment clean, and go ahead and do your best you can. For all those people who want to kill each other for the bigger bang for their buck, be my guest. For those of us who see the value in partnerships and working for a better good, where we value much more than capital, where we value humanity, where we value living together in harmony, we can coexist. But the decoupling must occur. The decoupling must occur. So folks, as we go on, and thank you very much for having been here, Raynard. Oh, okay, I thought you were giving me something else. But yeah, the decoupling has to occur, and we will get there. But we have to do it together. We have to do the decoupling together. For those of you, folks, I want to remind you now that the podcasts, all our podcasts for all these shows, I cleaned it up a bit and put it in the podcast form. You can get our podcasts on play.fm, all the Google Play sites. You can now get our podcasts on Spotify. You can get our podcasts on iTunes. Let's see, iTunes, play.fm. You can get it on TuneIn. You can get our podcasts everywhere now. We are syndicated all over the place, so please feel free to find it. And not only find it, but I ask you so kindly to share it and turn people on to this. What I'm going to try to do, I don't know. Right now, the time is killing me, right? I work 16-hour days. Let me tell you guys what I have purported for the future. Not everybody wants to hear all the narrative that I give in a 1-hour show, or all the, every now and then I ramble and I rant and all of that. A lot of people may just want to hear the guest. A lot of people may just want to hear a 2-minute cut, like what I do, a cut out something that is easily digestible, quick and ready to go, as opposed to sitting down in front of a computer or listening to a full hour podcast. I am trying to see how to arrange that, whether to create 2 channels, maybe a channels of clips and then a channels of the show. I haven't yet figured out how to do that, but there are these changes that I want to do. And this, if you have ideas of how you would like to consume, and also how you would like to be a part, what I'd like to do, and I had that as a part of my 10-point plan, is interview more of you guys, so that we can sit down and have, just like I brought Riane Eisler on. She's an expert in her field. I would like to bring on some experts in life, your life. So if you have something that you want to talk about and you want to do a 10-minute segment on this show, I would love to have you as well. If you have something you want to talk about that you want others to say, Raynard, it's our show. I love to call it our show because that's what it has to be. It has to be our show. And I want that, if you want to come on, or if you know of somebody that you say, you know what, because that's the difference I want to make between us and the mainstream media. I don't want to be just talking at people. We have to do this where everybody's voice is heard, and that's what I try to do. My name is Egberto Willies. This is Politics Done Right, and you know how I end this baby. I am what? Out!
Welcome to Politics Done Right. I am your host, Egberto Willies. This is the progressive program that will take the mystery out of politics. This is the program that will encourage you to make sure government becomes we the people. Whether you are liberal, conservative, or otherwise, you get to air your point of view. Remember, you can also send me a tweet to EGBERTOWILLIES. That is, at Egberto Willies. Let us engage. It is Politics Done Right.
1, 2, 3, 4.